Marvel got its start as timely publications in 1939, and since then, we've received heroes who have changed our lives forever, and controversial moments that have made us think twice about reading these things. The controversy isn't always warranted, but when it is, it's warranted hard. You should seriously consider subscribing to the channel. It's the perfect way to find all of the latest and greatest videos on comics, movies, TV shows, and more.
This drink, I like it.
I know, it's great, right?
Another!
Thor throws Mjolnir like a girl. After the events of the original Sin, Thor became unable to wield his mighty hammer Mjolnir. Shortly after, the inscription on the hammers changed so that a woman can pick up the hammer, and as a result, we have a female Thor. Not only that, but the new Thor is none other than Thor's main squeeze, Jane Foster. Even in the midst of her battle with cancer, she somehow manages to take on the role of the goddess of thunder and continues in the fight against evil. The announcement that Thor would be a woman sparked quite the controversy amongst longtime Thor fans.
Why does there have to be a story? There's no story.
It wasn't just the fact that the new person who was taking Thor's place was a woman, but also that she was taking his name as well. For some, it just didn't make sense for her to adopt Thor's name, but such is the case for many heroes in the past. Plus, Marvel can sell a lot more comics with the name Thor sprawled across the cover than with the name Jane. All of this was coming in the wake of another controversy from Marvel, with the reveal that the new Captain America would be African American. Some fans were complaining that Marvel was trying too hard to be more politically correct by having more diversity with their superheroes. The same complaint occurred earlier when the new Miss Marvel was revealed to be Muslim. Thankfully, the true fans embraced the changes of all these new comics, and they were met with commercial and critical success. The X-Men get political. The new X-Men Gold #1 just released in April 2017, and already there's a controversy surrounding it. The controversy from this comic comes from the art in the book. Now, there's no problem with the art itself. In fact, the X-Men have never looked more awesome. The problem lies hidden within the images. Artist Adrian Siaf is from Indonesia, where a religious and political conflict surrounding the election was underway during his time as an artist for X-Men Gold. During the election, protests had emerged that opposed one of the candidates. This might sound familiar to you Americans out there. From the protests came some numbers that represented the views of the protesters. 212, 51, and QS 551 were all numbers used by the Islamic Defenders Front. 51 and QS 551 represent a verse in the Quran. The number 212 represents December 2nd, the day that tens of thousands gathered to protest. These numbers can be found hidden in plain sight in some of the panels of X-Men Gold #1. Once Marvel found out what was going on, the numbers were removed from later printings of the comic, and Siaf was fired from Marvel.
What do we do, Cap?
We fight.
Civil War. Captain America's Civil War grossed $1.1 billion at the box office, beating out the likes of Rogue One, Fantastic Beasts and Where to Find Them, Batman v Superman, Deadpool, and Suicide Squad. Its source material garnered similar success, and the Civil War series made up the top 5 spots of the best-selling comics of 2006. However, that doesn't mean that it wasn't met with its fair share of controversy. Just like in the movie, there was an incident that ended with the loss of innocent civilian lives, which sparked the government to introduce the Superhero Registration Act. A group of heroes led by Iron Man supported the act, while an opposing group of heroes led by Captain America were against it. Superheroes aren't fantastic at talking things out peacefully, so their differences in opinion quickly escalate into all-out brawls.
Sorry.
The fact that these brothers-in-arms would cast aside their friendships over a government-issued act was controversial even without the events that followed. Spider-Man eventually revealed his identity to the world, Black Goliath was killed in one of the battles, and it wasn't until Captain America realized that violence wasn't going to solve anything that he finally gave in and the war ended. He's taken into custody, but before his arraignment, he's assassinated on the steps of the courthouse. Controversial, yes, but as is tradition in comic books, he is miraculously brought back to life. Magneto and/or XORN. Cassandra Nova attacked Genosha, and Magneto was one of the many casualties. Super sad for any Magneto fans. Later, a mysterious mutant with a star on his head appears. He's forced to forever wear a helmet to avoid destroying the Earth. He joins the X-Men and becomes a respected member of the staff at Xavier's school. Down the line, XORN finally takes off his helmet and reveals that he was really Magneto the whole time. He goes nuts, killing and destroying a good chunk of New York. Killing Jean Grey was the last straw, and Wolverine chops Magneto's head clean off, thus killing Magneto and, of course, his alter ego XORN, right? Not so fast, says Marvel. Grant Morrison, the creator of the storyline, was happy with the way that things turned out. Marvel, however, still had plans in store for XORN. They decided that XORN was a pretty cool character, so rather than killing off Magneto and therefore XORN, they bring him and Magneto back to life, but as completely separate characters. Magneto actually survived the attack on Genosha and had nothing to do with XORN. As it turns out, XORN is actually a twin. Shen XORN is a good guy with a black hole for a head, and it was his brother Kuan Yin Zorn, who impersonated Magneto and killed all those people. Needless to say, this was quite confusing for the fans, and to this day it's a prime example of what not to do.
Wow, great reflexes.
Deal with the devil. During the aftermath of Civil War, Kingpin hires an assassin to kill Peter Parker and his loved ones. During a sniping attempt to kill Mary Jane, Peter pushes her out of the way, but the bullet hits Aunt May instead. Peter is devastated, to say the least, and would do anything to get her back, even if it means making a deal with the devil.
Hey, I'm a superhero, remember?
You see, Joe Quesada, editor-in-chief at Marvel at the time, didn't think Spider-Man should be married. He thought that they could have more creative freedom and have more interesting storylines if Spider-Man was single. Thus, one of the most controversial decisions in Spider-Man's history was made. Peter and Mary Jane talk to the demon Mephisto to try and bring Aunt May back to life. Mephisto decides he doesn't want Peter's soul for the trade. Instead, he wants something more valuable. In exchange for Aunt May's life, Mephisto takes Peter's and Mary Jane's love. He erases every memory of the two being together, bringing their long and happy marriage to an end. The One More Day comic was published in 2007, and since then, fans have been waiting for it to be retconned. It seems like that will never happen, but clues in recent comics finally point to a solution on the horizon. It's been 10 years. It's about time that storyline was fixed.
Does anyone have any orange slices?
Ant-Man did a bad thing. Marvel Cinematic Universe fans know Ant-Man as Scott Lang, the funny ex-con who recently joined up with the Avengers. Original fans of the comic know Ant-Man was Dr. Hank Pym, one of the original members of the Avengers way back in 1963.
Dr. Pym?
Yes, I'm still alive.
He's one of the smartest heroes in the Marvel Universe, and is even the original person who created Ultron. Yes, it backfired, but that's besides the point. He was a respected character in the comic book world, at least until the incident. There's one giant smudge on an otherwise sterling reputation that Ant-Man will never live down. It's far worse than his creation of Ultron. Hank Pym hit his wife. He backhanded her right across the face. That one panel would forever cast a shadow over the character, but is that what really happened? In an interview with the writer of the comic, he explains that what was shown wasn't exactly supposed to happen. The problem is, the hit was supposed to be an accident. He was meant to throw his hands up in frustration and accidentally hit her, but the artist ended up drawing the scene quite differently. By the time the mistake was noticed, it was too late to correct, and thus Ant-Man was forever cast as a wife-beater. Gwen is into older guys. Spidey just can't catch a break. In yet another completely pointless side story, Spider-Man gets tangled up in another love triangle. This time, it's between himself, Gwen Stacy, and Norman Osborn. Gwen was Peter's first real love, and in turn the first woman that Spider-Man fans grew attached to. When she died, it sent shockwaves through the comic book world, completely ending the Silver Age of comics. She was a character that would be dearly missed, and Marvel just couldn't leave that alone. In spectacular Marvel meddling fashion, the publisher completely destroyed the image of the girl that not only Peter, but also all of the fans fell in love with. In Sins Past, Peter pieces the puzzle together and comes to the realization that Norman was a lot more involved with Gwen than he first realized. He found out that Norman had a thing for Gwen, and that Gwen just couldn't resist Norman. After his realization, Spider-Man is shown smashing up the room he's in, which is probably what a lot of fans did after reading this junk. There was no reason to taint the memory of Gwen Stacy. It was a backstory that was added in for filler, just to throw a twist into an already completed chapter in Spider-Man's life. Fans were outraged, and to this day, they deny that it ever happened. Twitch? Skilver? Maybe you can help us out. We'll give you a little history about Marvel's hottest couple, and see if you can give us the perfect celebrity couple name in the comments section. You may know Scarlet Witch and Quicksilver from the MCU. What you may not know is that these Russian twins are actually Magneto's children in the comic books. They're brother and sister, blood relatives. They have the same mom and dad. I just want to make sure that that's clear. Do you think that being related by blood would stop their love? Not a chance. These two had an unspoken flirtatious thing going on throughout their comic book lives together. Most people just sort of ignored it and uncomfortably looked the other way because, ew, I mean, what else could they do? But in Ultimates 3, the twins finally consummated their forbidden love. That's right, this sister and brother from the same mother could no longer hold back their feelings and made sweet, sweet love together. Not only that, but that creepy Wolverine guy watched it all from the bushes. Why is this integral to the story? It's not. It's so not. We think it exists simply to make everyone who reads it as uncomfortable as humanly possible. The ultimate bloodbath. Ultimatum was the perfect ending to the Ultimate series in that it was equally, if not more, awful than Ultimates 3. A lot of interesting things happened in that comic, so we'll just go over a few. Magneto messes with the Earth's axis and or magnetic poles. People actually get frozen solid in the streets because of the weather change, which makes sense because reasons. The real carnage begins when a drowned wasp is found being eaten by the Blob. Ant-Man isn't too happy that his wife was being eaten, so in his giant form, he picks up the Blob and bites his head off. Sure, why not? It's a reasonable reaction. Later, Magneto and Professor X square off in what's sure to be an epic battle between these two Goliaths. Nope. Instead, Magneto simply walks over and snaps Xavier's neck. Talk about anticlimactic. And Magneto kills Wolverine by ripping the adamantium from his body. Finally, Cyclops is able to kill Magneto by blowing his head off, putting an end to all the senseless violence.
You must help yourself. But that does not mean you will be alone. Look.
Am I going mad?
I think I'm a clone now. This storyline started way back in the 70s when Jackal made a clone of Peter Parker. Spider-Man was able to defeat his clone, and that was that. 20 years later, Marvel came up with a brilliant idea to bring back the storyline, and they revealed that not only had the clone survived, but he was living under an alias and became a superhero in his own right, known as Scarlet Spider. Later, it was revealed that the clone wasn't a clone at all. He was the original Peter Parker.
I'm his clone. Or maybe he's my clone. We're not sure.
So the Spider-Man that fans had been reading about for 20 years was actually a clone all along. After the massive backlash, Marvel was forced to drag the horrible storyline out for 2 more years, trying desperately to undo the damage. To fix the mess, they threw in tons more clones, resurrected the Green Goblin, and revealed that Scarlet Spider actually was the clone all along. Of course, there were still tons of plot holes left in the story, but by the time the story had finally finished, everyone was just happy that the whole debacle was over with. The events aren't even mentioned in the comics themselves. It was like it never happened, which is exactly how it should be.
You can't do something this horrible. It just isn't in you. Because it isn't in me. And you are me.
We may have just talked about 10 controversial moments, but we all know that there are far more to discuss. What are some Marvel moments that made your jaw drop? Give us the graphic details in the comments below. Also, don't forget to click the like button and remember to subscribe to CBR to find all your comic book resources.